Let's take a look at painting in substance on multiple objects. So this is, multiple objects selected here. There's some 30 objects that I've currently got picked. I don't want to attach them all together at this point. I just want to leave them as separate objects in 3ds Max in case anything needs to change later and whatnot. It's nice and easy. I've also got some of my modifier stacks still intact, like the strap around the handle and whatnot, so I can make edits later if I really needed to make changes. I've still got it. Very end, going into production, I would collapse it all down and possibly probably attach it all together as well. However, we want to be able to pack all these UVs into one space, which I've done, so that they're as packed as tight as possible. For our case in this project, it is going to be a 2048 maps only for each weapon in the set. Can only have one set of materials on it. So here's the one that is currently on the shield, and so it is one set of maps, 3 maps being loaded, which is taking care of our base color, ambient occlusion, roughness, and metalness, as well as a normal map being plugged in. The idea is we're trying to replicate the idea of going out to a video game. Of course, materials would be built in the video game engine and not in Max, but we're going to be rendering in Max in this case. So we want one set per weapon, okay? They've been all packed together. We're going to do the simple export selected, and then we're going to export it out to our FBX. Pretty much should be default settings. I don't think there's going to be anything that needs to change there. And fire this out so we can import it. It might give you a warning as such. In this case, I have a checker pattern has been applied, and it's telling us that for whatever reason, it might have a problem with it. A plugin has detected one animation. In this case, it's animation controllers. It doesn't matter. We're not concerned. I'm not even sure what animation controller this would be. We just want to make sure that it imports correctly when we come over to Substance. So in Substance, same import as normal. It's just going to be new, and select your FBX and set your map to 2048, or we can change it after the fact and import it. It's going to give us one layer to begin with, but something to check right away. We should have one material that has been applied, and you can see it's called main attack because that's the way it came in out of Max. It was called that way, and I had one shader applied. So back in Max, in our materials, you can see that this is our material that has been applied. It has this checker pattern, just the OSL checker, so I can keep an eye on whether or not the unwrap is even and everything. And so it's this one shader been applied to everything. When you send it over to Substance, it either has to have one shader applied to it, one material in the entire object, or nothing on it, on any piece, so that we get it to come in as one. So when we come back over to Substance, we should only see one material here. If you have multiple, you have to go back and do it again and make sure that it's one. The next thing I do with just this base layer that's on here, I do a quick test to see that, in fact, I can paint on it correctly. So I'll just pick some, ugly color, and I literally just go to a just standard brush, and I sort of nice and fine on the brush size, so I make it small. And I tend to do a scribble over everything and make sure that I'm not getting stretched UVs anywhere. So I just go around and confirm that indeed everything appears that I can, every piece, is paintable and not giving me any kind of crazy stretchable problems going on. I'm going to get rid of that layer now. So now it is the idea that we have to break this down so we're not painting on everything all the time. I'll want to be able to paint on given pieces without affecting another. So we need to filter those out and mask them out. And here's the easiest way. First thing I'm going to do is do a quick sort of head count. I can add them or remove them, but I'm just going to do a quick head count here of the amount of different pieces I will want to be able to paint on individually. So we got the handle, we got the wrap, we got brass. These got 3 brass pieces here. These 2 here, and this one here will be brass. I've got the blade. I've got this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then maybe the bolt 7. So I'm going to make 7 folders, not layers, but folders. 6, 7. And I'm going to start naming these so I keep my sanity here. And I'm going to call this the blade. And this will be the blade support, which is going to be this piece here maybe. And then the blade brackets. And we'll have a look at maybe the handle. And, so on and so forth. So handle, and what else do I have? Blade bracket, brass. So there's all my folders now. So now I want to be able to start painting. We'll start painting with the blade first, let's say. So in the blade, I'm going to go and add a layer and just give it a paint layer if you want. But the other way to do it, to start with sort of a base color on it, is give it a fill layer. And in that fill layer, make sure it's in the blade folder so we can open and close that. This is just going to be a fill layer. And I'm going to scroll on down and find a fill color to start with. Now, if you notice, there's the ability here to be able to paint on different elements of it. We don't need anything but color in this case. And I'm going to pick some, some sort of blue tone or whatever and put it on here. So if we look at my reference material that I'm working with, you can see that I have this sort of bluish tone, cold steel kind of feel. So I'm going to go with that, just give myself some sort of cold steel look. It really doesn't matter. We're going to be painting over it and filling it in anyways. And I don't need the height, the roughness, the metal, or the normal in this case. I just need to fill it. If you notice, it filled everything and not just this, not just the blade. Well, we only want to be painting on the blade in this case. So we could mask out our fill layer, but we'd have to then do that for every layer that we're painting on for the blade. This would become problematic. So let's filter out, let's mask out the folder. And if we mask out the folder, all the layers will get masked out along the way. So to do that, we're going to add a black mask. Adding the black mask, we're going to lose the fill layer as well because everything has been masked out with black. So everything's now not filled. We're going to step over to the polyfill, and we're going to do it by element, and we're just going to go and click on our blade, and now you can see that the blade has now been added in, and we can paint on this and paint on this individual layer now. So as I add layers in here, paint layers, and we go and maybe pick some sort of steel to start with. So I have a rough steel material. Maybe find a paintbrush that's got some sort of texture to it, and start filling that in. I'm going to turn my stroke opacity down, and you can go about filling that in and doing some painting on it to get it going at least. Get sort of start thinking about what the colors are going to look like. And I'll do this in big sort of passes. And not thinking about over detailing it right now or anything of that sort, just getting sort of a pass of texture onto it so that, I've got a better idea. And because I've got that base color in there, it doesn't need to fill completely because I can, just show through to that base color, which is kind of handy. So with that one done, I'm going to move on to the blade support and the brackets. I'm going to break these down into their elements and pieces at this point. Okay, so I'll come back in a second once I've got those done. So I'm just finishing off breaking it down. I'm down to the bolts, and you'll notice sometimes what happens when I'm trying to mask in certain elements, it will pick right through and seem to pick everything. You just need to sort of orbit around and find a better angle to select it, or try and select it in a different location. And, so I'm kind of hovering over undo here as I add these and get them to work, or make sure you're on an angle where you can't sort of pick through the wrong, through to everything else. I think these smaller elements just become a little bit harder for the Z depth sorting of the mouse to pick just the one object. So again, if you can get it at the right angle, you can pretty much go in and just find all these and pick them. So that is now everything filtered out. So you can see I have all these layers. I'll just, folders, and I can close those up. And now I can go about starting to paint. But before you do that, the first thing you really want to do is export your project back to Max so that you can just keep seeing the results. This is not our final solution here. So this is not where we're going to be rendering from. In fact, if it was a game, we'd be rendering out of a game engine. We want to be viewing the final results all the time as we're working in wherever the final output is coming from. So in this case, it's going to be 3ds Max. So we want to output all this now so that every time we output all our maps and we export all the maps, we can just automatically see it in Max as we go. So I'm going to flip back to the export textures here, Control Shift E. And in this case, we are going to use the Unreal Engine 4 packed solution, okay? And we're going to export it out to our project and right into the proper folder system. In my Scene Assets images, okay, so I'm dropping it right into the Max project here. I'm going to go and create a new folder, and this is going to be my main attack, I'm calling it. And I'm going to select that folder. And with the Unreal Engine 4 packed, I'm going to export that out into the Max project. Back over in Max, we need to build that material up now. So I no longer need the checkerboard. So I can just, if you start moving it and hold down Alt as you're moving, it'll disconnect it, or you can just delete it. Really doesn't matter. And we are going to use the OSL materials for this. So I'm going to go down and grab a bitmap lookup, okay? And we're then looking at the materials folder that we just created for our textures, sorry. And that's our main attack. And we have the base color here. I'm just going to hit H and collapse that down. Just copy it. You can make another one if you want, but I find that easier. Then we have this one, and this is the occlusion. This is the packed occlusion roughness metallic, and I'm going to choose that, copy it down, and then we also have our the third one, which is our normal map. And we need to do a couple of things. One, normal map can't be on auto gamma. It's got to be a gamma 1. Same thing with our other maps. The ambient occlusion, roughness, and metalness need to also be on gamma 1. That's because these are not really being used for color. They're value maps, or just controlling the value. We're going to take the outputs of these now. So we want the color into the base color. But before doing that, we want to multiply on the ambient occlusion in this one. I'm going to open it back up again so you can see this, what's going to happen here. And I'm going to make a math color multiply and node, and I'm going to take the output of the base color, and I'm going to take the red channel because this is, this file holds 3 occlusion, roughness, metallic in that order. So we have coming out of red, we have the occlusion, and so I'm going to drop that into base color. And then the roughness is going to be from the green channel. And then the metalness is going to be from the B channel. And then, of course, we're going to take this into the general bitmap, into the, normal bump. And then the output of this into our bump map. Now we can control the bump map value a little bit if we wanted, if we felt we needed it higher, but you know what? I rarely ever see it wanting to go higher than like a 0.5. Don't crank it up, it just starts looking terrible. So with this then, we also may have problems with our metalness. Now it's not going to look like much now, but you'll notice above here I've had to multiply the metalness now down with some mid-tone value, about a 0.5 on the color for the metalness because it just comes out too strong. I have a feeling that's because we output it for Unreal Engine. So again, same thing. I can just simply take the mask color, multiply, and drop that in, and then plug this back into metalness. And the mid-tone value of zero point 0.5 is already there, and that should set our metalness to look very similar to what it is coming out of Substance Painter. So now with that done and saved, I don't have to think about this again. And every time I export maps quickly, it'll just update, and I can come back and I can look at the real result. And of course, we want to turn our high quality on, and we're looking at lighting that we're going to want to have as the final result. And in that case, I can also be seeing it side by side with the other elements that I'm working on and make sure that things look correct together and fit together in their final resting place, which in this case is going to be 3ds Max. So now all you need to do is go about painting in Substance and working on your textures and ensuring that you've got nice quality textures going on.